fat trade paperback, flocking to the
I am joined by the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy,
Chip Zdarsky. Chip, thanks for coming.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and tonight I am joined by Chris O'Hara of BentBoxComics. Chris, thanks for taking the time to come on the show.
Thanks for having me, Konrad. I'm excited. Can't wait.
Glad to hear it. And of course, Chris, we're here to talk about your relatively new book, Artificial Number One, which is recently come out on Kickstarter. You've got Indiegogo going. So just to start with, same simple, easy question everyone gets. For the folks out there who have maybe never heard your name, never seen your face, who is Chris O'Hara?
Chris O'Hara is me. And there's not, I would love to say there's a lot to it, but there's not much. Just a husband, father, writer currently. But diving into the world of indie comics pretty recently. I just got into it over about a year and a half ago, but it's been a lot of fun. I've been really enjoying it. I do have a little bit of background in comics, mainly just from my father's side. So this is a quick, if you don't know me, but that's fine. But my dad used to ink at Marvel a long time ago. So he inked at Marvel for a while, which I used to have all Marvel, everything, comic books. We had a whole walk-in closet full of comic books.
Nice.
A whole mural. He painted a mural, hand painted a mural on my bedroom wall of just Spider-Man versus like all of his villains, like Kingpin and Venom and Carnage, and all on one side, just swing it, and just full bedroom wall mural, which was just comic book grade art too. It was beautiful. So I do have some history with all this stuff. That kind of went away when I was younger, when I was about 7, and then I kind of just picked it back up about a year and a half ago. So that's pretty much it.
What made you pick it back up?
So what made me drop it was my dad left. So he bailed, which as some do, and all good, but I kind of dropped a lot of like the pop culture stuff that we were kind of into, minus video games. I kept those, but everything else I kind of dropped. And then my buddy John Shell, who made a couple of books, he actually made this one right here. I wasn't planning on it, but I just have him set up. But he made a couple. There's a mango that he made, but
Cool.
He got into comics not that long ago. He's a really talented writer. And I've said this before, and it might sound rude, but seeing him do it, I was like, I could do that. I'm not, you know what I'm trying to say. But
Yes,
but it was definitely a seeing someone who I know is very talented, but seeing them like write, create, and then I physically held it in my hand. His comic book he made last year called The Last Wand. Highly recommend checking out. Issue 2 is coming out pretty soon. Under BentBox, he joined me as kind of like a co-founder. So we're getting a lot coming out of BentBox. Anyway, he showed me just kind of the process. And to be honest, I learned a lot from him, and I learned a lot of what to do and what not to do as well, which is, arguably more valuable, because there's a lot of things of like, I saved a lot of money in little places and a lot of time and headache in others. So that's what got me into it. So that started only about a year and a half ago. And I found an artist in Brazil, and he's an insanely talented artist. He's a diamond in the rough. And I'm glad I found him before he had ever done a comic book, because if anyone else picked him up, he would be huge right now. I'm trying to get him huge. That's my goal. But I'm thankful I found him. But that's how BentBox started, and then therefore Artificial.
Awesome. And quick shout out, your artist, I want to make sure I say this correctly, Gabriel Fonseca.
Nailed it. Beautiful.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, no, the art in this book is awesome. And I'm not gonna lie, when you emailed me, like I got the name Artificial, I'm thinking, okay, cool. Like we've just had like Cyberpunk come out, like Steam, or not Cyberpunk, everything is kind of on the rise. I figured we're gonna get something cyberpunky, futuristic, cool.
Yeah.
And then I saw the cover, and it's the sunflower field, and I'm like, for reference for me, my partner is she's a master's degree educated artist. She's a
Oh,
high
awesome.
school teacher. So in one of her favorite artists is your main character. So as soon
Awesome.
as I saw it, I was like, oh, it's about Vincent Van Gogh. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm in. Like, this is gonna be weird and different, and I love it.
Cool.
So now that I've mentioned the character, Chris, what is
Oh, I think you might have unplugged your mic. Just double check it since we are live. I want a little better.
and how about
Better. Okay. I just wanted to get you before we went too far.
thank you.
No problem. So, what was your question again? Artificial? Just what is it?
Yeah, what is artificial?
So, artificial is kind of a quick backstory. I've done a lot of ventures in my past. I've always been like a very creative person when it comes to writing. I dabbled in indie game development, so that's actually what I went to college for as an artist. So I would do 3D modeling and things like that. So I have a notepad. I have multiple notepads of just an insane amount of video game ideas. Now, I've always been a creative person in the way of I like visual storytelling.
Okay.
And normally, and I go more on the side of storytelling. So very narrative driven games, not just like point and click kind of, gimmicky games, but just there's a story behind it. So when I dropped indie games and I was like, you know what, I wouldn't mind getting into comics. That sounds fun. I think I would really enjoy that, working with a team again, an artist, writing something. So I kind of just went back to my plethora of notes of just little ideas of just like random words strung together that made no sense, which I'm sure everyone has. But they were all originally video game ideas. And I just found one that had a nugget of this idea, but it was actually more of a artist verse. Okay, so I like the Evil Dead and Sam Raimi, so it's going to be kind of that artist verse zombies, so like demons and stuff like that, and witches, and it was going to be very grotesque and silly and things like that. So I'll try to keep the story short, but I was originally planning on this to not be called artificial. This is how things kind of evolve. It's really odd, but it's cool. But I was originally going to have this be starring Bob Ross, who we all know and love.
Oh, right on.
Happy Trees. Yep. So I was originally going to have it be starring him fighting against zombies. I don't know how much you understand about Bob Ross, but he has obviously an estate. And if you want to use a public figure who hasn't been dead for more than 100 years, you have to license their likeness. So I had an actual meeting with the Bob Ross estate with his ex-wife. So like I had to have a whole meeting about my idea for a comic book. And the funny thing is, I'm like, okay, Bob Ross, and I have this pitch ready, and they go, okay, couple ground rules. We understand, you want to use Bob Ross. That's great. Just as a heads up, he can't be violent in any way.
Oh, well.
Well, I was like, that's going to be a bit of an issue. But what I did was, and this is, by the way, mid-meeting, or like right in the beginning of the meeting, I have a pitch ready. I'm getting ready to present it. And she says that, not the representative, not his wife, but she says that, and I go, oh, okay, no worries. So this is why I'm going to pitch it to you in a slightly a different way, that way to kind of gauge what your thoughts on it. So he's not fighting people or anything. He's actually fighting robots. So it's kind of artificial intelligence. I literally BS my way through a meeting, just to see if I could still get Bob Ross, and so I'm like, no, it's artificial intelligence. It's like he gets transported to the future, and he kind of the last remaining hope is this creative genius to fight against artificial intelligence, and it's just robots and things like that. So it's not like humans. So maybe that's okay. And they wouldn't bite. They're like, no, he can't be seen as violent in any way. So my original idea was Bob Ross versus zombies, which, by the way, was going to include 3 ancillary characters. It was going to be Vincent Van Gogh, Marie Cassatt, and Leonardo da Vinci, which are the 3 main characters of Artificial. When I found out I can't use Bob Ross, I kind of liked the idea of AI and like this post-apocalyptic future of, the creativity of humanity has been sucked out, and we're just mindless drones. And it is a bit of a trope, and it's been done before. I'm not saying I've come up with anything revolutionary, but I think that the the main story, the main premise is more of the artists rising up. So it's not warriors or superheroes or anything like that, but it's like struggling, mentally ill, to be honest, with Vincent Van Gogh artists that have a lot of demons, personal demons, being thrust into this futuristic world. So it kind of literally just came out because it was like a fight or flight moment, and that's why we have artificial. It was weird, but we got it.
Well, it's interesting, like the fact that worked out so well, because I remember seeing recently, and I don't know if it was on radio, on TikTok, on some other show that I've watched, like a podcast or something. Someone recently talked about AI, and one of the big fears and thoughts that was coming out of AI originally was like, oh, it's going to do away with like menial jobs, anything to do with like translating large blocks of text, stuff that people don't generally want to do anyway, but like creative stuff will never get touched. And I remember that being a sentiment like huge when we first really got into like Chat GPT coming out. And now if you look at AI and what it's being used for, it's like, oh, it's being used to write scripts, make art, like visual art, and it is the absolute antithesis of someone like Van Gogh, who is using, like you said, his own personal demons to create this wonderful art, and thus making him a cultural icon. I guess out of a happy accident like what you went through,
it was that was beautiful. It was a happy accident.
Happy little accidents. When it came to adapting then artificial to be starring Van Gogh and not Bob Ross, what were some of the challenges to rework the script at that time, or had you actually really gone in and written a lot at that time?
Yeah, so I had the first issue written, so I obviously had to present it, and it had a very different vibe, especially the opening. Like the opening had Bob Ross talking to his little pet squirrel, which is a real thing. So he had like a little squirrel that he liked to hold and keep. So it was like him painting this beautiful sunset and him talking to his little squirrel friend, and then singing through the forest on his way back to his studio, and just like nature. It was just very, I was really digging into him just being a great human and loving nature, and basically being just so removed from like technology. That's kind of how I started the comic, was that, and then it kind of progressed to show his military career, because he was in the military. So
he was.
I wrote this huge first issue that I was insanely proud of, and then basically threw it in the trash.
I am so sorry.
To an extent, I kind of kept the majority of the second half, because if anyone out there has read Artificial yet, because it is out there and available to be read, then you'll kind of see that there is a turning point halfway through. And so I was able to kind of keep half of it. But the beginning, I go, okay, Vincent Van Gogh is going to be our lead. You know what? He's going to be the unlikely hero, the leader who doesn't want to be there, who doesn't think he can. I was like, I think this is going to be a better character arc. So I'm this happy accident I'm very happy with. But okay, this isn't a happy beginning. I was like, we're starting in the depths of his depression, where he's not talking to a squirrel or singing through the forest. He's seen alone and destitute and depressed. And I actually I explore. I mean, there are some serious subject matters. I explore Vincent Van Gogh killed himself in real life, committed suicide. And so I explored that, because in real life, he went out to a field, took his old revolver, which if you read the comic, you'll see that is his revolver. We made sure to make the likeness exact. A lot of love went into this comic. And then the turn happens where he gets teleported right as he's getting ready to pull the trigger on himself. And then he's forced to use, it's kind of hey, did you want to end it, or are you going to try and fight now?
Yeah.
And then instead of taking himself out, which was the easier route and the route he was already planning, now he has a weapon to use to keep his life. So that's kind of the route, and it turned into a deeper script, which I'm very proud of, and I'm enjoying writing. But there was that challenge at first of like, oh, this is a completely different vibe than what I was originally going for. But I'm definitely enjoying it. I've always been kind of like pulled to anything dark, and so I was like, it was almost more of a challenge to write the happy Bob Ross. And then once I was Van Gogh, I was like, okay, this is my bread and butter. This is easy.
Yeah, you can really dive in with them.
Yeah.
Then you know what? For the people watching either now live with us or who will watch this later on, we're right at the time. I rarely get to hit this. We're right at the time I like to ask. Given that the book is out, if someone's heard enough and they're like, "I'm in. I want this." Where is the best place for them to go? How can they get it? And roughly, what would it run them?
So right now, if you want the physical copy, that's the beautiful thing about Indiegogo is it stays open after you run it, because we haven't set up like an online shop yet. But Indiegogo, technically, if you go to our Indiegogo, which is I believe just artificial number one second chance campaign, if you Google that or just artificial number one, you'll find it. That you can still order the physical copy. So if you want the physical copy, that's how you get it, and you'll get it for $8, $5 shipping for US. And then if you would like the digital copy, I believe it's only $3 on Global Comics currently. We have 2 versions as well. If you're interested, we have a regular version, a standard version, and then a black and white version, which...
Oh, he's got it on him. I love it.
Yeah, so the regular version is right here. So that's the regular version, all full of color and beautifulness. And then the propaganda edition is black and white with splashes of colors. So there's like a little bit of a difference there, but you can get both. Both are available, obviously.
Awesome.
And then if you live in Florida, you can come out to almost any con happening next year, because BentBox is going to be there, and we'll have physical copies.
I love it. I have dropped a link in chat or in the comment section for the Indiegogo. I did want to mention, quick shout out. We have a friend, Paul Blight Malkops, is glad it became Van Gogh, and he highly recommends the black and white version, which I think looks super fantastic. So, yeah.
That's the funny thing about the black and white version. It doesn't sell, and so far I haven't actually sold any unless they bought it. This is just behind the curtain. I haven't sold any of just the black and white version. I've only sold like the collector's edition, which is basically both bundled. And then every time I get that, everyone messages me back. They like the black and white one better. I'm like, well, okay. I appreciate it. I'm glad it turned out well.
Yeah, no, it honestly, it pops from the pages that you showed. I find, and I think this is just generally in comics, for me anyway. Anytime you get a comic that is drawn extremely well with a distinct style, which absolutely this book has, when you strip most of the color out and then just let a few things pop, it really carries. And I think Gabriel did a bang up job on the art.
For sure.
Yeah. So I guess one question that I like to ask, you mentioned a lot of love went into the book regarding, say, the revolver and getting the exact type and the details right about it. I have interviewed a lot of people who are in their day jobs involved in some sort of research, and then they pour that knowledge and ability into their comic. So I always like to ask, how did you research Van Gogh and the time period to get this as correct as possible? What were you not worried about? What were you just like, this is cool, but not useful for me? How did you go about it?
Yeah, so like a couple things. I'm a data analyst in my day job. As much as I'd really like to be like, I'm a full-time writer, maybe next year. But currently I'm a data analyst, so it is kind of easy that, like you said, it's almost just like, oh, let me just research, and I kind of know how to do that. So for Vincent Van Gogh, I've always been familiar with him. My interest peaked with Vincent during when he was the focus of that Doctor Who episode. Not sure
with Matt Smith.
Who is my he's my doctor. Anyway.
Same.
Yeah. So that was when, and I'm sure he became much more culturally relevant because of Doctor Who in that specific episode, which is crazy. But that's when it kind of like came back into the zeitgeist, and I just remembered Vincent Van Gogh, and I'm more interested in him. When I chose him, I didn't know a ton about him. I knew the basics. So I really did have to dive in and look at his personal life, look at his mental health issues, which there's there's some debate on whether or not it was actually physiologically something involved with his brain,
Oh.
or if it was because a lot of the paints that he was using were lead, and so they think that was the most probable cause. Was lead paint. Kind of drove him crazy. So that was really interesting. So I did a lot of research on him, and I 100% enjoyed it. And one of those here, I'll give you a quick example of probably my favorite. It's not the most flashy part of the book, but right here is a letter that Vincent Van Gogh is writing to his younger brother Theo. So I had to research a lot about it, and when I discovered his letters to Theo, I actually read all of his published letters. So he has published letters, not just to Theo, but to a bunch of his loved ones and other contacts. But I read all the ones to Theo, and I was like, I want to include kind of a suicide note if you read into it, but it's like a very subtle version of that.
Yeah.
But it needed to feel to me, if someone's not familiar, they'll read it and go like, oh, okay, cool. If to me, it needed to be a letter Vincent Van Gogh would have written. So I read all of his letters. I kind of copied a lot of his ways he spoke within those letters, ways he wrote, little sayings he had, just to make sure it matches close. So if you go back and read some of his letters and then read what is his letter in this comic book, you hopefully wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And that was my goal. Even to the point where at the end, he says, sincerely with a handshake, love Vincent. My wife read it and she goes, this doesn't seem right. This seems weird. Why would you write it that way? I was like, don't ask me. Vincent Van Gogh signed off on like 4 or 5 of his letters with that. I was like, so that's just how he wrote. And my wife was like, oh, okay, cool. So I tried to be as true to Vincent Van Gogh as I could be, 100%, down to the revolver, down to his mental health issues, everything. Now, as far as things that are like cool or interesting that I'm not going to keep, I don't think there are any. I think I am trying to find a way to involve everything. Even he had a stint as a missionary because he went after faith. Yeah, when he started feeling depressed and stuff, he went to the church and became a minister and then a missionary, which is very interesting. Not a lot of people know that. He abandoned that eventually, but that was as his painting continued and his mental health declined, which once again kind of just leads to the idea of probably the lead paint. So that's going to be addressed and kind of explored probably in issue 4 and probably at the end of the comic. Spoiler. But anyway, I'm kind of going to use Vincent for all he has, and I hope people enjoy it, especially like your wife and other people who are fans of him or familiar with him. Yeah,
like as mentioned, when I saw the cover, or not the cover, but I saw. Oh God, I'm just gonna open it. I'm not gonna open it on live stream because spoilers.
Thank you.
But there's a page in this book that I fell in love with, and if it's okay with you, I will show the page, because it's early on, and it's the shot where you see the ground and then all the sunflowers, and I think it's a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I've got it all inverted, don't I? Bear with me. Everything's gonna light up for a second, I think. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, this is the page I want to share. And here we go. So this is the page, and I absolutely love it. And like the moment I saw it, I was like, oh, it's a Van Gogh. And I enjoyed, like, I think the fact that you incorporated him, having loved that episode of Doctor Who, having seen the immersive, I forget what it's called, but the immersive Van Gogh show, which is really cool.
Really cool.
Kind of long, so like maybe go in a slightly altered state as long as you are of legal age. Yeah, but I don't know, something about this and that drew me in. And then when you started going into the later events of the book and really sort of exploring that all, it was like, oh, this is going to be a ride.
Hmm.
So I guess when it came to putting Van Gogh in the situations that you put him in, because obviously now you have to extrapolate and fictionalize
Yeah.
what you believe this man would do.
Mhm.
I guess my main question is, what role is mental health going to play in the story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So since we're early on, Artificial One is for all intents and purposes like an introduction, because I plan on telling a very, not a long, but a very robust tale. Like I plan on kind of getting at least maybe 8 to 10 issues out of this. I have a lot of plans for the
Ooh.
story, and I'm really excited about it. But so wasn't able to really get much of that in on the first one. But I will say spoilers, but not really. But there are ancillary characters, other protagonists that come in and kind of assist. They're more like it's just a motley crew at that point.
Oh, cool.
But they all are going to have a specific role. And I mean, it wasn't much of a spoiler in this version because I show it on the cover. But the main characters are Vincent Van Gogh, Marie Cassatt, and then Leonardo da Vinci. So Vincent Van Gogh is going to be the main leader, but he doesn't know it yet. He doesn't have confidence in himself yet. He thinks everyone considers him weird and he's an outcast. And so the dynamic within the group is going to be kind of him preferably taking that back seat, with Marie Cassatt, the main character, kind of taking the driver's seat, because she's a very outgoing woman. And that's another one. I researched her very like a lot. She was a very progressive person who really pushed boundaries and kind of just didn't take crap from anyone. And so I've been, and it's funny, I had this conversation with my artist yesterday because we're going through issue 2 right now. But
Awesome.
just the way he draws her is just amazing. And I'm writing her, and I relate to her more than any of the other characters, so it's actually more enjoyable writing her. But anyway, so this is just to give a little, because a lot of this is going into the comic, a lot of love is going into it, I want there to be a good character arc for all involved. Vincent is definitely the main character, but you're not going to see that for a while until he finally steps up, which is just part of an arc. But there are going to be definitely moments of slippage and realities not really making sense to him, and fear and moments of disillusionment, and just he's just struggling. So, but that's kind of where I'm taking it out, because I'm planning on using the idea of it being lead paint. So in theory, he is no longer around lead paint. I'm planning on him kind of he's coming out of the effects of his day-to-day life of just eating bread, drinking absinthe, and smoking. That's all I did. So, and coffee, but more absinthe than coffee. Yeah. So that's all he did. So it's kind of, I mean, I'm playing with the idea of, writing in a withdrawal section to where it's like, okay, he's really not doing good. But at the same time, I am aiming for more of that young adult and an adult audience. So, it's a it's a balancing act. Yeah, but it's definitely going to be in there. But you're kind of going to see Vincent Van Gogh become like the man he could have been. It's going to be kind of a redemption arc. That's the plan.
I dig it. To get off Vincent, because we spent quite a bit of time talking about him, and I love him.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to ask about you, Chris, and I feel like you're going to have a cool answer for this one. Often when I've talked to folks, either they've made like 8 comics and they're just doing another Kickstarter and they're like, yeah, this is what we're doing, boom, boom, boom. Or I get people who are literally, they've finished their first one. They're really like, I hope people like it.
Yeah.
And I like to ask them, because you've made a comic, you are physically standing beside it. Mentally, when you think about it, Chris, do you think of yourself as Chris O'Hara, comic book writer, or are you Chris O'Hara, dude who's written a comic?
It's a good question.
It's a fun one.
So I will admit I have yet to have spoken the words Chris O'Hara, comic book writer. I haven't done that yet. I'm willing to do it on your show,
Thank you.
but I would say I'm kind of there. And this is a discussion I had with my buddy John, who wrote Heathen and Last Wand and Wingless, a bunch of other ones that he's coming out with next year technically. But we both kind of said 2024, it's not going to be a make it or break it year, but it's going to be the make it year kind of deal. Just like that's why I'm going to all the cons in Florida, where we have a big inventory of all our comics. We're running promotions and kind of going to get out there and try and get our name out there. And I would love to have that moniker of comic book writer, not data analyst, part-time comic book writer, but I have a overactive brain, 100%, like a lot of people do, a lot of creatives do. So I've written 3 issues of Artificial so far, 2 issues of another comic book called Sundown, another one of Bury Me and Dixie, another one. What's the other one I just wrote? Nana's Love and Crafts. I'm really excited about that one.
Okay.
It's about a grandma who knits a portal to Cthulhu. Anyway, so it'll make sense. So that I'm just having fun, and I've always been very, like I said, creative person. So when I get down to just writing and I have ideas, I have to write them down and put them in a notepad. So I've kind of allowed myself to be a little bit more expressive with that, and just seeing that Artificial 1 has happened and Artificial 2 is happening, and it looks freaking amazing. I'm so excited. And if you liked Artificial 1, you'll love Artificial 2. It kicks the crap out of Artificial 1. I don't know if that's the appropriate thing to say or not, but it is.
Good.
It's just really good. I think we've hit a stride kind of deal, and then we have more planned. But anyway, I have all these examples of, okay, I've done something, so now let me just do it. So I'm not really hesitant, like you said, because for sure you get that moment of imposter syndrome, which I've never had, and I don't know why. Maybe I'm a sociopath, but I never really had imposter. I fake it till you make it a lot of times. Or you don't make it, which happens all the time. So I'm definitely more in line to just be like, okay, let's just make comic books. And if people don't like them, they don't like them. If they do, they do. And right now I'm just kind of having fun and, kind of just express myself and getting that creative itch. I'm itching it because otherwise I'm just being driven mad. So I got to do something. And comic books is kind of a lower barrier to entry for getting that creative idea going, in comparison to games or movies or anything like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing response to that question. I did want to mention Paul wanted to let you know he definitely thinks you're a comic book writer, and I love that.
I would like to say I know Paul. I'm glad you're here, man. he's my number one fan. It's to the point where he said he wants to help fund the rest of the series of Artificial because he loves it so much. But we'll see how, maybe I would love that.
I dig it. I guess. Where to go? Because you know what? I've got these questions. Let's use them. Let's see. We kind of touched on that one. Oh, easy question. Don't know why I didn't think of that. Your name. Actually, under your name. So we got Chris O'Hara at BentBoxComics. Tell me about BentBoxComics.
So BentBoxComics is my indie comic book publisher that, I've never been one to do things small. Drives my wife nuts. And I'm sure people can relate to that. Like if I do something, it's like full bore, and it's like, I'm sure it's a nightmare for her, but I can't help it. So instead of just going, Chris O'Hara wrote a comic book, I'm like, well, I have to have a name, and I have to have a brand, and maybe that brand can spread, and I can get other writers and other artists to join, and then we have basically Marvel. And I'm like, why am I? Yeah, it's totally reasonable to think that, But anyway, thankfully she's supportive. So BentBox is kind of just a love child of me and one of my high school buddies, John, who was kind of my inspiration. But I started developing a brand before he kind of figured out the brand he wanted to to use. So we decided, hey, let's just merge, and that way, if people think of BentBoxComics, they already have, Artificial, they have Wingless, they have Last One, they have, a bunch of a heathen. So we're trying to basically just provide a lot of good content, a lot of well-written books, really good art, captivating stories. So that's kind of the goal. The term BentBox actually came from another venture I was going to have, which had to do with 3D modeling. If you're familiar with 3D modeling, there's a tool called Bevel, which is my favorite tool. Basically just rounds the hard edge. And then I'm a big fan of alliteration, just like Stan Lee, Peter Parker, and whatnot. So we had an idea of creating a website called BentBox, which basically would just sell 3D models to indie game companies and stuff. And we were just going to make it, me and one of my other buddies who does 3D modeling. So that was going to be a venture. That ended up falling through, and I still love the name BentBox. So now we're BentBoxComics.
BentBoxComics. I dig it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's yourself and John. And
we're reaching out to a couple of people. There's a guy named, actually, hold on. I always mispronounce his last name. So if anyone wants to look him up, but his on Twitter his name's Star Million, but I think his real name's John Casey Orozco. It's kind of hard to pronounce his last name. But anyway, he's writing a book called Orium coming out. He's going to the plan is to have him join BentBox. So his comic is this black and white comic that looks really cool. That's going to have the BentBox logo on it. There's another guy right now we're working with, which is kind of cool. I haven't shared this very much. It's kind of been secret, so maybe exclusive for you. This guy named Ben Gibbons out of the UK. See, I don't do anything small, and I understand how it's frustrating. But this guy named Ben Gibbons out of the UK, we ended up having an idea for a comic book jam. And once again, have you ever heard of a game jam? Yeah. So this came about because I am from the game community, and I've been to game jams before, and I was like, you know what? I love the indie comic community and how it serves very much like an indie game company. You have your artists, you have your sound design team, you have your programmer, you have UI design. So you have all these people that have to work together. And then a game jam brings random people together and you make a game in 24 hours. I was like, why can't we set that up at like a Comic-Con and have just a room and call it the comic book jam? And you sign up and you'll have an artist and they'll get assigned with a writer who will get assigned with a colorist. And then you have 3 people, and then maybe one of them will be a letterer. And then you can do a 5-page comic in a day, collaboratively work together. And then that can be put into an anthology, and that'll be the anthology for the year, Comic Book Jam 2024, the anthology, and then you'll have like maybe 10 little books or little comics in there. And so anyway, we had that idea. And so now I'm working with him over there. That might be a BentBox exclusive. We're working with Thought Bubble. And anyway, we're not doing anything small. And it's like, I started a year ago, but I don't know how I don't know what a break is. Breaks don't have them. and so now I'm juggling, international things. So it's been fun. I'm not really tired of it yet, so I'm going to keep going. But anyway, I'm praying that you're going to see a lot of BentBox in the future. That's the goal.
I dig it. Well, I mean, given Artificial already has a number 2 on the way. Like you said, you're getting art for it. When do you suspect the Kickstarter, Indiegogo, whatever platform you go with, when do you suspect that'll happen for number 2?
So my thought is then our first Comic-Con is January 7th, 2024. I was considering kicking it off on that day and have there be like a Comic-Con code associated with it, to where if you go by the booth, you can maybe scan something, get a discount, go sign up for the Kickstarter and have it run. So because the book should be completed by January. We also don't start Kickstarters for half completed books at BentBox. All the books are always completed.
Love it.
100% before the Kickstarter even starts. So that way, as soon as that bad boy ends and we get that moolah, you get your comic. So that's the goal. But so it should be finished by then. I am currently toying with the idea just because, to be frank, both the Indiegogo and the Kickstarter didn't do great. You can always go check.
Okay.
You can look at the numbers. They just didn't do great. Part of that is on me, is just not, I started my Twitter started when I started making the comic books. I've never done a Twitter before.
Yeah.
I had zero reach at all. Didn't know what I was doing. Made a comic book and then said, hey, come buy it. So didn't really have much reach. So I'm hoping maybe this Kickstarter for issue 2 might get somewhere, but I'm also toying with the idea of just not doing a Kickstarter, mainly because the book will be completed. I could just sell it on. I could just sell it. So that's my thought. So follow me on all of the socials at BentBoxComics, and you'll be up to date and in the know if we end up doing a Kickstarter. But it is an if at this point, because I'm not sure. Because I could very possibly just have them printed, sell them online, and then just make sure to keep them coming at all the cons, because we have 4 cons coming up next year. We got January, March, 2 in March, and then one in July. So, I could just sell there. I don't know. I'm toying with the idea because the amount of stress that goes into a Kickstarter and Indiegogo is high, as I'm sure a lot of people know. And if I could avoid that high stress for 30 days straight, that sounds good. Then again, it is also like a benchmark of interest. You know what I mean? You get funded and you go, okay, people like this. So anyway, I don't know if you have any suggestions, but right now we are currently toying with the idea of not doing one, but we'll see.
What I will say, and again, take this with a massive, my head-sized grain of salt, as I've never made my own comic. I haven't done my own Kickstarters, but what I find time and time again that has made people's Kickstarters successful is a month ahead of its launch, start talking about it. Getting the notify me page links out there. Because people, just like Paul, who's watching and enjoying this, and he's going, I want my second book. Paul, I hope that's a incorrect or perhaps not at least bad perception of you.
It was very accurate.
Oh, perfect. If you can give them the notify me now page, they can go get the notification, and then when it actually goes live, they'll just go, oh, I want my book. Right. And it also lets you tell more people about it now, as opposed to, hey, this is the first day, we've got 30 days left, right?
Yeah, true.
Paul, very accurate. Thank you, Paul. I meant no ill will in that. I think you're fantastic. Thank you for watching the show.
Yep, sounds just like that. But yeah, no, I agree, and I've seen that as a huge part of the success, and that's why I'm going with definitely taking the majority of the onus on me as of not promoting it as much as I should. I wasn't really sure. Like I said, it was first Kickstarter, first comic. It's a lot to kind of figure out. So if I do one, for sure, it'll be probably if I want to kick it off in January 7th, I might start making the Kickstarter, early next week, for all I know. That way I have about a month to play around with that. But we'll see. But yeah, that's definitely that's a big part of it.
I guess my other question is, because you've got physical copies, so I'm assuming for the second issue, you as well would want physical copies, and that way you could take them to cons and stuff, and do all the things. My concern for you, because I wish you all the success in the world. I hope this thing rocks, and you can just do full-time comics if that's what you want. Perfect. Yes. If you're doing just sales, it is my concern is the upfront cost to you of once the book is done. One, you've had to pay Gabriel. So I am sure that is not cheap. Because as I will say time and time again, pay your artists, pay them well. Art is expensive. Don't expect it to be fast.
No.
Yeah. So that being said, and then on top of that, whatever production company you're going through to make them probably wants a minimum order of 250 if they're really nice, 1,000 if they're normal. And
Yeah.
that's not cheap either. That is
No.
$4,000 right there. So
Yeah.
that's my concern, where you could go pure digital, but then you don't get
Yeah.
this, and
No,
that's
you
what
don't.
so it's
Yeah, and I don't go cheap. I mean, I'll message you after this, and especially, happy birthday to your wife or something, since she likes Van Gogh. But I'll send you a couple copies. That way you can get the most recent. But you'll see I don't go cheap. The cover's suede feel, soft touch. Like I wanted it to be something when you held it in your hand, it felt like quality.
yeah.
Especially for my first comic, I didn't go cheap on it, so it's very expensive. So I'm with you on that. And I don't know how many people, I've never been scared of money, not because I've never really had it. Not in the way of like, oh, I have a lot of money, so I'm not scared of it. Just because it's like, I use it as a tool. Money is a tool to me. It's not the world. So if I don't have it, I don't have it. That means I just can't do anything right now. That's fine. But I've never been scared of like money and talking about it. But the average comic book, this is for watchers who are interested, will run you about $5,000 to $10,000 to make. That's paying your artists. Now, this is if you are a writer and you actually have to pay artists, letterer, colorists. You know what I mean? When you have to kind of break it down in that way, when you pay them well, because that's my goal as well. And I plan on, I keep telling my artists too, I was like, share this on social media, help me grow this. I was like, you guys are as much a part of this as I am. I was like, Gabriel, you're making this thing as good as it can be. And I can't sing his praises enough. There are so many moments. This is just a quick sidebar. There are so many moments in this comic that I have to tell it. I don't know if we're short on time.
Yeah. No, go for it.
There's a character in here named Paul, who is a real life person. But Paul is, and let me get to it real fast. This is another thing. He's from Brazil, Gabriel. So there's a bit of a language barrier, but it's been really fun because we're both super into pop culture, so we understand the same references and stuff. So it's easy to communicate that way. But this is right here is Paul. I don't know if he looks familiar at all, but obviously he was long enough to me.
Oh, okay.
So that's Paul. But I had originally wrote him as, how was the cafe tonight? Paint another pretty picture. As kind of like this pompous douche who makes fun of Vincent.
Yeah.
Gabriel, of course, read the script and was like, oh, that's a nice thing to say. And so he drew him as kind of like this jovial, chubby, like, hey, Vincent, how are you doing? And then Vincent's reaction, which is just pure vitriol, he just hates Paul, didn't make sense to Gabriel. And then when he did that, I immediately said, no. Paul is now a jovial Santa Claus who's just a bumbling fool, and he's overly nice to Vincent, and Vincent can't stand that. And I was like, you literally changed this section of the story just because there's a language barrier, which is just really funny. But there are so many moments that he improved the comic for the better, for sure. But anyway, the tangent was mainly because as we grow the comic, I want to pay him more. The next issue 3. I want him to have at least $10 more per page or whatever. I want to make it to where he's taken care of. So yeah, that's a big part of it too. So I want to pay my artists well. I want to get paid, but at the same time, I'm technically have a full-time job. I would gladly work my full-time job longer if it means my artist can stay a full-time artist longer. If that makes sense. I'm more than happy to do that because I'm in a good situation. So anyway, yes, pay your artists well. It's very expensive to make an indie comic, which I found that out the hard way. But it's doable. And the upfront cost that you mentioned is probably the biggest barrier to entry, is just the upfront cost. Thankfully, I was able to have some savings, and it's kind of been put into this as more of like a investment. It's almost been an investment in like a business venture.
Yep.
So I don't mind putting, and my wife is very supportive, and I appreciate her. She doesn't mind putting in the money to print 300 copies, for $1,500, and then, you know what I mean? Yeah, it gets expensive, but it's kind of just, it's like starting a business. Lord willing, I will turn a profit in a year, and then at that point, I'm just making the comic off of sales from the comic. That's the goal.
Perfect. So I have a quick tidbit for you, or story, or perhaps someone you'll want to reach out to, and then Paul has a comment which I actually want to get into.
Okay.
My tidbit for you. One of the very first people I've interviewed, one of the very first teams I interviewed, is called Group of Seven Comics. It's Chris Sanigan and Jason Lapidus. They're actually local to me. I've learned Jason lives like 3 blocks away or something like that.
Oh wow, cool.
It's kind of cool. But the reason I bring them up, when they started, Jason was doing all the art, Chris was doing all the writing, and I've talked with Jason and gotten to know him and Chris, and we've sort of become better friends over the years. God, it's been years since I've been doing this show.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he mentioned was he's like, yeah, like the first year, I think year and a half, the sales they would get at cons were paying for the cons. So they would like break even and just get to meet people and talk with other comic creators, which they loved. So when you go to cons, Chris, talk with everybody, be nice, be everything, absorb like a sponge, all that stuff. You got your head on your shoulders. You don't need me to tell you that.
I'm a bit of an extrovert. I'm one of those weird kids who really liked speech class in high school. So
good.
I'm one of those weirdos. So I can't wait for the Comic-Con. So yeah, I'll be out there.
But basically, yeah, and so it as they've grown it, they go to every con that they can, basically. And yeah, they've through selling original art, selling the books themselves, they've gotten like a kitty going, and it just sort of feeds into itself.
Yeah.
And they've been able to do some really cool stuff because they can afford to do it now. So yeah, just keep doing you, Chris, the way you are, your personality, your drive, working with John, your partner, correct?
Mm-hmm.
John.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll be great. Now,
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Paul's question, because I think it's a good time to ask. Paul asks, any cool cover ideas for Artificial #2?
Yes. So we have plans. We're kind of okay. So if you want, actually, I have it here. Hold on.
Oh.
Well, no. I don't have. No. I would love to say I had the cover ready, but I don't. No, I was going to give an example. So I had a conversation with my artist, and this is just kind of like a thing. And I think John and I kind of share a similar sentiment about this, is that the part about indie comics that I love is that there are some cookie cutter ones out there. Sure. A lot of it is very unique and original and like doesn't feel like a big 2 comic. And that shines through when it comes to the covers, when it comes to the dialogue, the characters, everything. So when we were talking about covers, I was like, I really wanted, and this is just because this is the one that you already shown. But this was our first one. So technically we quote unquote upgraded to the official one, which is this one because it is a homage to the Sam Raimi Evil Dead poster. It's basically a 1-to-1 match, which my artist came up with, and I was like, I love it. This is the new official cover for issue 1. But still, the sentiment withstands that I like the idea of the cover and the title being kind of just it's just a picture. It's not artificial, and then the 3 main characters in action pose. You know what I mean? It's not going to be that. Very rarely you're going to see that come from a team at BentBox, I think. It's going to look intriguing and hopefully kind of like introspective. You're going to need to look at it a bit to see what's going on. So as an example, issue 1 kind of did that. Artificial is on the paint, is painted on the canvas. Issue 2 is going to be somewhat similar, but I kind of can't give a lot away.
Because no spoilers, don't do anything,
because it is kind of a spoiler. But I will say it's going to be another case of kind of like this big, that's more of a close-up idea. Let's just say it's going to be a very sprawling image with its, plastered on an item in the foreground. So we're going to kind of run with that theme. Now, I will say another cool idea real fast for you, Paul, is that this is the propaganda edition, the black and white. So as you can see, we will not be using AI art. I promise you. This was AI art. I have to be honest. The whole purpose, though, was to make fun of AI art. Because I basically put in Vincent Van Gogh self-portrait, and it gave me some kind of weird dog face man. And so we had the idea of making it this like art gallery that the three main characters are looking at, and then Leo here is like, "Who's this?"
Is that a barcode too?
Yeah. So like good. I had a lot of fun designing this, but we're kind of going to play with that idea moving forward though with classical art, and take a lot of inspiration for only the propaganda edition to kind of integrate. I wish I could show you all of them because I don't have the sketches on me, but basically Gabriel went through like a bunch of pop culture stuff from popular artists from like Salvador Dali and basically ways to take some of their very popular paintings and just make them artificialized, like, you know, the main characters in there and stuff. And that's kind of going to be the propaganda editions. So you'll see some really cool homages to some classically, you know, painted items, which is another big thing that we're trying to do in the comic. And this is something that I love as well. Just sorry, see you asked me to talk. And
keep going.
It gets dangerous, but that's why we added an Easter egg section of the comic in the back. So we tried to make sure we're going to have a lot of callbacks to, you know, just classical art. We want to make sure it shows through. You know, you got the scream and all these. So that's going to be basically kicked up a notch too as we progress, because we have a whole Pinterest board of Baroque period paintings and things that were like, all right, you know, issue 2, page 12, panel 4. Let's do this Baroque painting for the stances and stuff. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I dig it. Fun. No, 100%. Please, because like you said earlier, one of the cool things about indie comics is you do get a lot of unique, different, and interesting stuff that you will not find at one of the major publishers. Whether it's DC Marvel, whether it's, frankly, Dark Horse, Image, Boom, any of them. There's so many I can't name them all, I'm sure of it. But yeah, when you just get someone like yourself who finds Gabriel and you just rock it, you get to have a lot of fun. One thing I did want to say on a graphic design end I loved is actually how you have the Bent Box logo. It's clean, it's small and out of the way, it doesn't distract from the art. Actually what I'll do, I'll blind myself again. There we go. And I'll put that cover up one more time. Just this. And it's even translucent. Like, I love that. The only other thing I think of, because I love like the idea, if you're going to keep going with have the art just be like the covers just be like someone was looking at a thing and saw art painted. I think it'd be really cool is if you take a look at the covers that Tony Daniels.
Okay.
When because he puts his signature on every single cover that he does, but he always puts it on like a piece of paper that's blowing in the wind somewhere.
Okay.
I would consider doing something like that to even further the style. But you got to do you. I just think the way you're going is awesome.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. It's not distracting, but it's definitely there. Yeah.
No, I like that a lot. My artist has both. So I have Gabriel Fonseca, who's the main artist for Artificial 1, and then we brought on another gentleman named Sergio Martinez. He's from Mexico to be the new colorist. So technically, Gabriel did all of the art. So that's another thing that blows my mind about Gabriel. No one else. I mean, if you want to work with him, ask him, but you're not allowed because he's working with me. But that's how I feel about Gabriel. I was like, I want him to be mine. It's very selfish, but it's because he's so freaking talented. He did all of the art, lettering, and color for Artificial 1. He did everything. And the thing is, and it's one of those things where I've always been one of those. I'm like a what's his name? Tony Robbins, whatever his name is, that idiot.
Oh,
but the guy who like kind of puffs you up a bit. I've always been a bit of a puff up kind of guy, to where I'm like, all right, I need to find a letterist now. And then I'm like, unless you think you could try it, Gabriel, do you want to try doing letters? He goes, I've never done it before. I was like, how hard could it be? And I said it in a way to try and get him to be like, all right, yeah, I'll try it. His lettering is fantastic. It's some of the best I've ever seen. But I think it's because he's so in tune with comics. He's an addict. He's a fan. He loves comics. He can call out a cover from a mile away and know the artist, the writer, the series it's involved with, everything. So his knowledge is invaluable, and it shines through with all of his art. So it's just fantastic to have him. But for issue 2, I wanted to take a little bit off him. I was like, there's a lot of coloring that's going to be involved, so let's hire a new colorist. But both of them, though, I get on rabbit trails, but this is kind of to say that both of them like to hide little things in their art. So like there'll be like in the crease of Vinny's jacket, there will be like a word or something here and there, and there's a rabbit. There's a rabbit in the moon on issue 2 as like an homage to the Matrix, like follow the rabbit. So like there's little things, and that's just them. And that's another thing why as a writer, it's my baby, but I've told both Sergio and Gabriel, you have free creative reign. And the thing is, I trust them to know what looks good. Mm-hmm. And if there have been moments where I have to rein it in or go like, no, let's try this idea instead. And thankfully, sometimes it works out better. Sometimes theirs works out better. And normally in our meetings, it is the best idea wins. There's no pride involved. It's not like, okay, I had an idea, and that needs to be in there because I don't want, it's my idea. That's never involved with how we work. So whatever you see on these pages is just 3 people working together. And then whatever the best idea was during that meeting is going to be on the page. So you're kind of getting the best that we can give you. And that's why there's been a couple times where Sergio goes, I put a bunny in the moon. I hope you don't mind. And I was like, that's fine. I was like, it looks cool. I was like, I like it. I was like, why not? I was like, it doesn't screw anything up. I was like, it's just cool now. And he goes, okay. I was like, if you find other places to do it, do it.
That's awesome.
That's how we work.
I love it. Thank you for letting them do that and inserting tidbits and well, not spoilers.
Easter eggs, little.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. It's a question I've asked a lot of creators is, have you put yourself in it, your friends, your family, some sort of, so thank you. You know what? We are over our hour. So I've got one last question for you. Mm-hmm. And that is simply, Chris, who do you think we should interview next?
So I got to say John Shell. He's my partner in crime. He's got a ton of projects. He's also insanely busy. So like, hopefully you could even schedule him because he's just so busy. But I think he'd be a great person to have on. We share a lot of the same mentality, but we're different in little ways. I'm an extrovert. He's more of an introvert. So you'll kind of see that side of comics from him. So I'd recommend John Shell. I think I would also recommend that guy I mentioned who is potentially going to join us on BentBox and kind of bring his comic under our label, which I'm really excited about because it's the first person that we don't know yet, and we're kind of just almost like shop. We're like shopping. We're like, hey, would you like to join our label? But that's that John Orozco. I like I said, I always mispronounce his name, but he's over in Scotland right now. But he's got a really cool comic coming out. I think @StarMillion is his Twitter. I can always send it to you, but one of those two.
@StarMillion88.
Yeah, that's it.
I just followed him.
Yeah, perfect. I'd recommend either one of those two. I think you get a good interview out of them.
Beauty. Well, I will grab John's details from you after the show. Yes, I've just followed StarMillion, so maybe I'll reach out because his art looks really cool.
Really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Chris, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And for the folks out there, in the chat is a link to the, or not in the chat, in the comments is a link to the Indiegogo. Paul, thank you. I would love to interview Jason Aaron.
That'll work too.
We'll see what I can do. But yeah, I just want to say, Chris, thanks for taking the time, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Glad to hear it. And for the folks at home, absolutely like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of Chris. If you've read Artificial Number 1, let me know what you think of it. If not, go get it and then tell me. And of course, we'll see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day, yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns, can't find issue 2? Nah, collector problem.